The moment the gaze fixes, the universe hesitates. It's as if every particle awaits an invisible decision before taking form. Nothing moves by chance. The simple act of perceiving changes the behavior of the subatomic world. Physics calls it the observer effect. Ancient traditions called it the power of awakened consciousness. Between the two, there is a point of convergence. The recognition that reality does not occur outside, but within the field that observes. When attention becomes lucid, chaos reorganizes, patterns align, and life responds precisely to the frequency of the one who contemplates it. The observer is the code the universe silently deciphers, and it all begins the moment you see, truly see. Lights turn on in silent laboratories, cameras capture invisible trajectories of electrons, and something unthinkable happens. Matter changes its behavior as it is observed. In double-slit experiments, particles that should act like waves reorganize, as if aware of the human gaze. The recording of consciousness modifies the physical result. This realization, disconcerting even to scientists themselves, is the point where physics touches mystery. The universe seems to respond not to the passive presence of the observer, but to the quality of their attention. Curves and patterns appear on digital screens, revealing that the real is not stable, but pliable. Nature seems malleable to the gaze that recognizes it. Each observer acts as a lens shaping the surrounding space, filtering the quantum field through their expectations and mental vibrations. This is not a mystical metaphor, it is a measurable phenomenon. Where there is conscious observation, form arises. Where there is none, potential remains. Lines of energy reconfigure as focus moves. Neuroscience experiments show that the simple act of directing attention alters synaptic connections, as if the brain itself participates in the same quantum principle. What the physicist sees in the laboratory, the meditator perceives within the mind. The observer and the observed are not separate. Both dance in synchrony within the same field of possibilities. Particles obey the gaze of the scientist, just as circumstances obey the human gaze in everyday life. Every judgment, every silent certainty, works as a filter that selects what will be perceived and ignored. The world does not show itself as it is, but as we are able to see it. That is why two individuals can share the same environment and inhabit completely different realities. The observer not only measures the universe, he instructs it. Inner silence is one of the keys to perceiving this. When the mind quiets, it becomes possible to feel the texture of reality before it solidifies. In this state, the quantum field seems alive, pulsing in all directions, awaiting instructions. Thought is the command, emotion is the fuel, and attention is the brush that gives shape to the invisible canvas of space-time. At every moment, the universe asks, "Which version do you wish to see now?" And it responds as the focus settles. Mental shadows of doubt and fear distort the field. The observer who faces the world with tension reinforces patterns of chaos, as if his own vibrations fragmented the quantum fabric. Science calls this the observation bias, the act of interfering with the experiment simply by being present. Spirituality translates the same principle symbolically. What you fear, you attract. What you reject, you amplify. What you contemplate with clarity, you manifest. Both speak of the same dynamic, consciousness shaping the real. Subtle internal movements define the kind of universe each one experiences. A scattered mind creates disordered probabilities. A coherent mind, aligned between thought and feeling, generates stable collapses. The quantum field does not distinguish morality or intention. It responds only to vibrational coherence. Thus, the emotional focus of the observer is as relevant as the physical action performed. Attention is the true creative energy. Sparks of consciousness spread throughout all matter. Every cell of the body is a microcosm that responds to the inner gaze. Studies in epigenetics already suggest that beliefs and emotional states alter genetic expressions. The observer effect, therefore, is not only a physical concept, but also a biological one. The human body, like the universe, is in constant dialogue with the way it is perceived. The inner gaze can heal or sicken, expand or restrict. Subtle structures of reality seem sensitive to intention. Measurements of the electromagnetic field around the heart show that coherent emotions produce harmonic waves that propagate meters away. If the body can generate measurable fields that interact with the environment, then the observer effect surpasses the boundary of the mind and becomes an integral phenomenon. Body, emotion, and thought acting as a creative unit. Fragments of attention are like seeds cast into space-time. Each planted thought generates a potential collapse, and the set of these small observations weaves the fabric of experience. The universe is not a fixed stage, but a living response. At every moment, consciousness emits a silent question and receives a corresponding version of reality. The gaze defines the contour of the possible. All that is unobserved rests as pure probability, waiting to be called into form. Echoes of this understanding resound in ancient traditions. Vedic texts already described the world as Maya, a projection shaped by perception. Taoist masters affirmed that the observer is the breath that organizes chaos. Today, modern physics merely translates this same principle into mathematical language. The laboratory replaces the temple, but the mystery is identical. The universe is not seen. It is revealed by the consciousness that contemplates it. Revelations of this kind do not ask for belief. They ask for direct experience. It is enough to notice how attention changes everything it touches. An ordinary object becomes precious when truly seen. A noise disappears when listening deepens. An emotion transforms when it is observed without resistance. The observer effect is active in all these everyday gestures. Consciousness reorganizing the world according to the frequency of the gaze that sustains it. Mental vibrations travel through inner space like waves seeking form. Each thought carries an energetic signature, a kind of frequency that spreads through the quantum field and interacts with probabilities awaiting collapse. The mind not only interprets the world, it radiates it. Everything perceived externally is a reflection of a vibration that originated from the observer. The universe is not an ordinary mirror, but a living surface responding to the frequencies emitted by consciousness. Inner skies form the moment a thought repeats with emotion. This repetition creates vibrational density, as if the invisible begins to take body. Feelings are not mere chemical reactions. They are coded waves carrying instructions to the field that sustains reality. Each emotion sends an interference pattern that reorganizes particles and energetic fields around it. Thus, the mind becomes a holographic projector, transmitting vibrational images that translate into physical circumstances. Quantum mirrors multiply everywhere. People, places, and events act as reflective surfaces of what is emitted within. What is called destiny is often just the coherent return of vibrations sustained over time. If the observer maintains frequencies of fear, the field returns equivalent experiences. If one vibrates in trust, it attracts synchronicities and harmony. Reality behaves like a vibrational echo, not moral, but resonant. Neural fields and quantum fields share the same principle of coherence. Studies in physics and neuroscience indicate that stable brain patterns create ordered interferences that favor intuitive decisions and expanded perception. The unbalanced mind emits noise, like a misaligned projector that distorts images. Inner clarity, on the other hand, focuses energy and collapses sharper realities. That's why meditative states produce tangible physiological effects. The body responds to the vibrational coherence generated by the mind. Mental frequencies can be measured. Alpha and theta waves, for example, are associated with states of tranquility and creativity, while high beta patterns indicate tension. These oscillations are biological translations of internal vibration. The brain functions as a transmitter-receiver, modulating perception according to the type of energy it sustains. The observer in tune with elevated states perceives more possibilities. The one vibrating in fear perceives only threat. Thus, the world bends to the dominant frequency of the consciousness experiencing it. Resonances between mind and environment form the backdrop of meaningful coincidences. Synchronicities are not accidents, but vibrational adjustments between observer and field. The universe responds in the language of correspondence, not chance. Every situation that arises is feedback from the emitted pattern. This understanding transforms the way we deal with events. Nothing is purely external. Everything is energetic communication between consciousness and matter. Inner landscapes shape outer space more precisely than any isolated action. The way a thought is sustained defines the invisible geometry of the surrounding field. Visualizations, for instance, do not work through forced imagination, but through vibrational coherence between mind and emotion. To visualize is to feel the field adjusting to a new frequency. The whole body participates in the process. Breathing, heartbeat, and nervous system modulate the energy that interacts with space. Perceptual horizons expand as the observer recognizes their vibrational nature. Realizing that everything is energy alters the relationship with the real. The separation between inner and outer begins to dissolve, and the world becomes a participatory projection. Every encounter, every challenge, every joy is seen as part of a dynamic hologram reflecting the inner state of the conscious projector. Here, the observer effect gains an intimate dimension. To observe is to emit. Circuits of belief sustain long-range vibrations. What one believes defines the quality of the emitted wave. Automatic thoughts, often inherited from past experiences, function as filters that distort the original signal of consciousness. Reprogramming the mind is cleansing the transmission channel, removing the noise of fear and guilt to allow the field to receive a more coherent message. This purification is not theoretical. It can be felt in the body as lightness, warmth, or expansion in the center of the chest. Spirals of attention determine each person's vibrational cycle. What is observed persistently gains energy. What is ignored dissipates. That's why cultivating elevated mental states is more than a spiritual practice. It is reality engineering. Focus is the switch that activates manifestation. Every repeated thought is a quantum command. Every sustained emotion is a frequency that instructs the universe. The field responds not to words, but to the vibration behind them. Invisible networks connect all observers within the same sea of energy. No thought is lost. Every vibration contributes to the collective symphony of consciousness. Thus, transforming one's own frequency also alters the common field. Small internal changes reverberate on scales the linear mind cannot measure. Global reality is a reflection of the sum of individual vibrations. Reprogramming the world always begins with reprogramming one's own field. Constellations of possibilities orbit consciousness like stars waiting to be seen. The human gaze is the telescope that makes them shine. Each point of attention lights up a part of the universe, making it real for the observer. The power of the mind lies not in controlling matter, but in decoding the vibrational information that forms it. To see is to tune in. To observe is to choose the frequency of experience. Emotional layers often disguise themselves as lucidity. Thoughts that seem rational are many times refined expressions of fear. The observer believes they are analyzing reality, but in truth, they are projecting their lack onto the quantum field. Each judgment is born from an inner vibration and returns on the same frequency. Thus, life replicates lack, not because it wishes to punish, but because it is merely obeying the signal transmitted. Mists of insecurity veil the clarity of perception. When the mind grows accustomed to vigilance and control, it loses the ability to see what is. Consciousness becomes a filter that distorts the real, capturing only what confirms its own anxiety. It is at this point that the observer effect reveals its most subtle aspect. Emotional focus defines the kind of universe one inhabits. Thinking from absence generates successive absences. Remnants of the past sustain patterns of fear. Unresolved memories vibrate like repetition circuits, and each new experience aligns with the old. The mind creates convincing arguments to keep the same narrative alive. The observer forgets they are in command and becomes a hostage to what they believe they see. The world, obedient, returns exactly the script they repeat inwardly. Mental whirlwinds feed on attention. The more consciousness tries to get rid of a problem, the more energy strengthens it. The quantum field does not distinguish negative or positive intention. It recognizes only vibrational intensity. To resist is another way of keeping what is feared alive. This is the invisible trap. The struggle against fear is still a way of observing it, and the act of observation makes it persist. Nebulae of judgment form walls between the observer and experience. Each time the mind defines something as wrong, it fixes energy in the pattern it intends to avoid. To judge is to crystallize reality around a limited meaning. Energy stalls, fluidity disappears. The observer loses the ability to allow the new quantum collapse and repeats, in cycles, the same emotional responses. The invisible error is trying to change the world without altering the vibration that projects it. Rivulets of unconscious thought run beneath everyday life and determine the direction of the flow. Small worries, automatic mental comments, silent assumptions, all of this emits frequencies. The universe listens. What seems insignificant is, in fact, the code that instructs the field as to which version of reality should manifest. Change does not begin with big decisions, but with attention to the micro thoughts that accumulate like particles of vibration. Portals of perception open when the mind questions its own filters. The simple act of observing fear without resisting already modifies its energetic structure. It loses density, becomes transparency. Instead of trying to eliminate the emotion, the observer recognizes it as a signal, information about the point of imbalance between desire and belief. This neutral observation dissolves the invisible error and returns to consciousness the power to choose new frequencies. Mirages of control make the observer believe that safety depends on predictability. However, the quantum field operates in uncertainty. The desire to control every outcome reduces the spectrum of possibilities. The universe ceases to be a creative flow and becomes a rigid reflection of the fear of losing. True safety is born from vibrational trust, the silent certainty that the field responds to coherence, not effort. Disordered emotional rhythms create noise in the field. Rapid thoughts, instant judgments, and constant comparisons produce interference, like static in a radio transmission. In this noise, the observer loses tune with the desired reality. Reprogramming the mind requires slowing the inner rhythm, finding the natural cadence of the breath, and allowing the frequency to stabilize. Clarity is not conquered. It emerges from vibrational silence. Mental labyrinths form when the observer confuses thought with truth. The mind, conditioned by survival, interprets any unfamiliar sensation as a threat. This biological reflex, useful in ancient times, becomes an obstacle when it comes to conscious creation. Each self-protective thought reinforces the identity of fear and keeps the collapse stuck on the same line of reality. To free oneself is to realize that thinking is not the same as observing. Glimmers of insight arise the moment the observer realizes that their perception creates the plot. This awakening is the turning point. Fear does not need to be fought, only seen as inverted energy. When illuminated by neutral attention, fear reveals the original impulse of expansion that was distorted. Every dense emotion contains within itself the seed of its transmutation. To see this is the beginning of vibrational freedom. Inner dimensions open when the focus stops seeking what is lacking and begins to recognize what already vibrates in fullness. Gratitude is not just a noble feeling, it is a realignment frequency. It changes the point from which the field is observed, allowing new possibilities to collapse. The mind stops operating in survival mode and enters creation mode. The invisible error unravels when the observer trades vigilance for presence. Seeds of clarity sprout from the soil of conscious surrender. To stop resisting is not to give up. It is to allow the field to reveal a broader version of reality. The observer who accepts the moment as it is withdraws energy from the struggle and returns it to coherence. Thus, fear becomes a force of expansion and doubt a portal of discovery. The universe responds, as it always has, to the vibrational quality of the gaze that perceives it. Centers of perception operate like vibrational antennas, constantly picking up and emitting signals. Attention is the tuning mechanism, the point at which consciousness chooses which frequency it wants to decode. Focus is, literally, an instruction sent to the quantum field, informing which version of reality should become visible. Everything that receives no attention remains in a potential state, waiting to be called into form. Therefore, to observe is to create, and the way one observes defines the kind of reality that manifests. Threads of consciousness connect thought, emotion, and matter in an invisible web. Each time the observer fixes the mental gaze on something, they transfer energy to that image. This transfer is the process of collapse, the invisible gaining density until it becomes an event. Sustained attention is quantum fuel. What is seen repeatedly is strengthened, becoming a stable pattern within the personal hologram. What is ignored dissolves, like a wave that finds no resonance. Internal maps of attention define the territory of experience. If the mind occupies itself with threats, it creates narrow vibrational paths, reproducing survival scenarios. When focus expands to possibilities, the field responds with new probabilities. Attention is the pencil with which consciousness redraws its own reality. Each thought is a stroke on this dynamic map, and the observer is the silent cartographer of their own destiny. Roots of distraction sustain the pattern of vibrational inconsistency. Fragmented focus prevents coherent collapse. The mind, conditioned to multiple stimuli, spends energy without direction. The result is a chaotic field where intentions cancel each other out. Reprogramming reality begins by restoring the unity of attention, gathering the scattered gaze into a point of presence. When psychic energy stops fragmenting, the universe recognizes the command as a clear signal. Crystals of intention form the instant focus aligns with feeling. Attention alone is like light without direction. Feeling gives density to the wave. Together, they create vibrational coherence. This union between thinking and feeling is the true code of manifestation. Energy moves toward emotional clarity. If mental focus desires something but emotion vibrates in doubt, the field receives contradictory signals and responds with ambiguous results. Rays of presence dissolve automatism. When the mind returns to the now, it clears the noise accumulated by reactive thoughts. In this state of pure attention, the observer perceives the instant before judgment defines it. This fraction of a second is the 0 point, the quantum portal of conscious creation. It is there that reality is still fluid, and any frequency can be chosen. Full attention is the keyboard that programs the vibrational code of the universe. Mental currents of worry drain creative energy. Focus on what is lacking keeps the same line of reality alive. The field merely returns what it receives. Attention on scarcity generates more scarcity. This is why reprogramming does not depend on effort, but on vibrational repositioning. Changing focus is changing the command. Simply put, what is fed with attention grows. What is forgotten returns to the field of potential. Subtle breezes of consciousness become powerful forces of transformation when maintained consistently. Small gestures of focus, repeated throughout the day, slowly reconfigure the vibrational pattern. Looking at what is working, even if minimal, expands coherence. The field interprets this as a new signal of stability and begins to organize matter around that frequency. Attention is the purest form of directed energy. Mental architectures of intention create interference patterns that intertwine in the field. Each thought of clarity forms a wave that propagates and meets similar one. It is in this meeting that manifestation accelerates. Attention does not act in isolation. It joins the collective vibrations of all who share the same tuning. Reprogramming, therefore, is also aligning with the global frequency of expansion, a silent collaboration among consciousnesses. Subtle marks of perception indicate the degree of coherence of attention. The body reacts immediately to true focus. The breath deepens, the mind slows down, time seems to expand. This physiological state is a sign of vibrational alignment. The observer becomes a clear channel, and the field responds almost instantly. At this point, attention is no longer effort, it is a natural state of conscious presence. Mental gardens bloom under the care of continuous attention. Everything that is nurtured by loving observation grows stronger. The mind is the soil, emotion is the water, and focus is the sun. This triad generates vibrational growth. The secret of reprogramming is not merely to think differently, but to cultivate daily presence. Reality, like any living organism, responds to the consistency of care. Ridges of energy form waves that propagate in all directions. What seems small within the mind, a brief thought, a discrete feeling, becomes a quantum signal amplified by the field. Attention is the universal amplifier. To reprogram is to learn to listen to what one thinks and consciously decide what to keep active. This practice is simple and profound. Observing focus is, in itself, the first act of transformation. Pulses of energy course through the body each time a thought aligns with a true emotion. This instant of coherence creates a harmonic wave that reorganizes reality around a new pattern. Change, which seemed slow, becomes immediate because the field recognizes the unison vibration as a clear signal. The universe does not respond to isolated ideas, but to the congruence between mind and feeling. It is the moment when thought ceases to be a concept and becomes a living force. Invisible bridges connect the dimensions of intention. To think one thing and feel another breaks the energetic flow, like wires disconnected from the same network. But when thought, emotion, and action vibrate at the same frequency, the observer creates a closed circuit of creative power. Coherence is this state of inner symphony, in which no part of oneself denies what the other affirms. It is the vibrational signature of clarity. Human hearts are instruments of resonance. Each heartbeat in harmony with a coherent thought produces measurable electromagnetic fields. Science already observes that elevated emotions, such as gratitude and appreciation, generate stable patterns in heart rhythm and influence the nervous and immune systems. This physiological balance is also vibrational. The body becomes an ordered transmitter, and the universe responds with the same stability. Emotional coherence is physics applied to consciousness. Rivers of intention flow more strongly when they encounter no internal resistance. Doubts, guilt, and contradictions act as dams in the energetic movement. The coherent observer learns to release these interruptions, replacing judgment with acceptance. By integrating what they feel with what they think, they transform conflict into flow. It is in this state that manifestations accelerate, for the field recognizes consistency. Coherence is the language the universe understands without translation. Brief instants of truth are enough to change everything. It is not necessary to maintain perfect coherence all the time. It is enough to reach it authentically and repeat it until it becomes the new vibrational pattern. A single moment of deep alignment can redraw entire lines of reality. Energy follows clarity. The more sincere the feeling, the faster the quantum collapse reorganizes. Transformation is less about doing and more about being wholly congruent. Tides of coherent emotion cleanse mental noise. The body adjusts, the heart rate slows, and the perception of time expands. This expansion is the space where the new is born. Many call a miracle what is merely coherence sustained long enough for the field to respond. Vibration does not struggle, it organizes. The universe is a resonance mirror, and coherence is the polishing of that mirror. Old crystallizations dissolve under the impact of coherence. Mental patterns based on fear do not withstand the frequency of conscious love. This force is not sentimentalism, it is pure vibrational physics. Emotional coherence emits waves that restructure the body and the environment, harmonizing relationships, opportunities, and decisions. The coherent observer does not force the world, they magnetize it by the precision of their inner alignment. Personal worlds regenerate from the center of coherence. Thinking and feeling in the same direction generates a stability that spreads outward, influencing environments, people, and even seemingly random circumstances. Coherence is contagious, and the collective field responds to the sum of individual vibrations. Each person who aligns internally helps create a global pattern of harmony. Rapid change is, at its core, collective synchronization. Inner sounds of clarity echo through the whole body when the mind stops fighting the heart. It is in this living silence that the observer perceives the power of vibrational congruence. Intuition expands, decisions become evident, and the path unfolds without effort. Coherence does not need to be sought. It emerges naturally when attention anchors in the truth of the moment. The field simply follows the command of that truth. Doors of alignment open whenever intention is sustained with purity. Congruence creates space for the new quantum collapse to manifest without interference. Clear thoughts, coherent feelings, and corresponding actions form the triad of immediate creation. This unity dissolves psychological time and brings the observer closer to real time. The vibrant now, where everything happens. Coherence is the state of least resistance and maximum creation. Reflections of coherence are perceived in practical life. Small synchronicities arise, the right people appear, decisions become simple. The mind tries to call this luck, but it is merely the natural consequence of ordered vibration. Coherence eliminates chance. The universe reorganizes around clarity like iron around a magnet. The coherent observer does not need to control. They simply hold the right note, and the field composes the rest of the melody. Dimensions of creation expand as more consciousness adheres to this state. Coherence is contagious because it activates the principle of global resonance. The energy of a person in authentic alignment reverberates, adjusting the surroundings. Personal transformation becomes a collective force. This is the true power to change quickly, to tune into universal harmony and let the universe mirror that precision. If this knowledge resonated with you, take a deep breath, feel your own heartbeat, and write in the comments the phrase, "I choose vibrational coherence." Mun. This simple act of conscious intention is a way to consolidate the learning in the field, and, if you wish, like this content as a sign of alignment with this frequency. A fog of judgments dissipates the instant the observer decides to simply see without trying to interpret. The mind, accustomed to classifying, loses the habit of separating what is good or bad. This state of neutrality is not indifference, it is perceptual purity. Reality reorganizes itself around this silent clarity. Without the interference of beliefs, the quantum field stops reacting to memories of the past and begins to respond to what is seen in the present. Circles of perception expand from neutrality. Judging contracts, observing expands. The energy that was previously spent trying to control or justify is now returned to consciousness as full presence. Neutral observation acts like a transparent lens. The world ceases to be seen through emotional distortions. The result is immediate vibrational reorganization. The field senses the unobstructed space and collapses new possibilities with greater fluidity. Emotional bonds of resistance begin to loosen under the light of neutral attention. Dense emotions cannot withstand the clarity of one who simply observes. Without the label, fear loses identity. Without the name, pain dissolves. Neutrality reveals that every emotion is energy asking for recognition. When recognized without analysis, it reintegrates into the natural flow of consciousness. The observer, in lucid silence, returns the past to potential. Inner candles are lit the moment judgment ceases. Perception becomes refined, almost sensorial. Small details gain new meaning, not because they are interpreted, but because they are finally seen. The present ceases to be an interval between past and future and becomes the exact point of creation. To observe without expectation is to free reality from the prison of memory. Domes of stillness form around neutral consciousness. The body responds with relief, the breath adjusts, and the heartbeat falls into harmony. The mind, without the task of evaluation, rests. This state is not emptiness, but concentrated fullness. Within it, the observer perceives that each event contains multiple possible readings, and that choosing one of them is a creative act. Neutrality opens the range of the real. Sensory channels between mind and field are strengthened when the observer abandons the need for control. Neutral observation does not try to change anything, it merely reveals, and by revealing, it changes everything. The paradox is that creative power lies not in interfering, but in allowing. The universe does not need to be pushed to transform. It is enough for the gaze to stop contracting. The fluidity of the real is born from the relaxation of attention. Mental storms lose strength before stable consciousness. Intense thoughts keep arising, but they no longer drag the observer along with them. Neutrality functions as an anchor. The external world may remain chaotic, yet the center remains unshaken. This vibrational stability allows reality's collapse to occur without resistance, adjusting to the coherence of the silent observer. The mind learns to witness without interfering. Subtle flows of transformation begin in simple moments. Observing an emotion without judging it is a quantum act of recalibration. The field understands that the energy can reorganize freely. Fear, seen with acceptance, converts into presence. Anger, contemplated without repression, transforms into creative force. The neutral observer is a vibrational alchemist, dissolving the density of emotions into pure consciousness. Inner paths open as the gaze becomes transparent. Reality no longer needs to prove anything. Everything that exists comes to have a legitimate place within the field. This radical acceptance does not generate passivity, but the power of conscious choice. Only those who see without judging can decide with clarity. Neutrality is the fertile ground of lucid action, that which is born not from reaction, but from recognition. Mental formations of certainty dissolve under the light of silent observation. What was believed to be fixed reveals its fluidity. The mind perceives that truth is not absolute, but contextual. Judging was an attempt to freeze movement. Observing is allowing the flow to follow its natural course. Neutrality dissolves the rigidity of convictions and returns to consciousness its original elasticity. Oceans of possibility become visible in the absence of judgment. Each thought, each emotion, and each event are perceived as part of a cosmic dance in constant adjustment. The neutral observer is not on the sidelines. They are at the center of the movement, but without identifying with any form. This position allows creation without effort, for the flow of life becomes an ally, not an obstacle. Inner solstices mark the vibrational turning point of the awakened observer. The point of maximal neutrality coincides with the point of greatest creative power. Judging imprisons time. Observing frees it. The past dissolves because it is no longer fed, and the future is drawn from a present that is uncontaminated. To observe without reacting is the most revolutionary gesture of human consciousness. Invisible walls begin to give way when consciousness stops waiting and starts feeling. The universe does not respond to future desires, but to present frequencies. The secret of manifestation lies not in asking, but in vibrating as if it were already real. Emotion is the language the field understands. Feeling the result before seeing it is the creator act par excellence, the fusion between intention and experience. In that instant, the observer becomes the very reality they wish to manifest. Quantum mirrors reflect the vibrational state of the now. Those who vibrate in lack continue creating absences. Those who feel fullness attract coherence. This quantum tool is paradoxical. It is not about imagining the future, but about feeling it in the present. The collapse of the new line of reality occurs when the body believes in the experience before the mind does. Sensation precedes the event. Emotion, sustained consistently, alters the field without effort. Webs of information connect all that is possible. Each line of reality is a frequency of experience ready to be chosen. By feeling the desired result, the observer tunes to that frequency and begins to vibrate in phase with it. The field, obedient to vibrational coherence, collapses the corresponding probabilities. This practice is what ancient masters called remembering the future, a conscious act of temporal reconfiguration. Inner flames of certainty light up the entire body. Feeling as if something has already happened produces electrical and chemical signals corresponding to that experience. The brain does not distinguish between the real and the intensely felt. Therefore, the body anticipates physical reality and emits a new energetic signature. The universe reads this signature as a command. The result appears not through effort, but through vibrational correspondence. Subtle spaces of imagination cease to be fantasy and become instruments of creation. To visualize with emotion is to activate an internal quantum laboratory. Each detail perceived with authentic feeling sends a precise coordinate to the field. The universe does not respond to vague requests. It responds to stable frequencies. The observer who sustains the vibration of fulfillment is already living the new line of reality, even before seeing it physically. Emotional mountains dissolve before constant practice. The challenge is not to believe, but to maintain the state of coherence long enough for the collapse to occur. Doubt is noise. Felt certainty is pure field. The process requires surrender, not control. The more natural the feeling, the more quickly the universe reorganizes itself. To manifest is to remember, and to remember is to allow the body to feel what the heart already knows to be true. Luminous flows of consciousness traverse inner space when the observer embodies the new state. Energy expands, and the body vibrates at a different rhythm. Time loses linearity. The future approaches like a magnetic field, drawn by the frequency of the already felt experience. It is at this point that results accelerate. The universe, now coherent with the observer's vibration, adjusts circumstances, people, and events to reflect this new harmony. Reality codes are rewritten by the touch of true feeling. Words have power only when they carry coherent emotion. Thinking without feeling is like trying to light a lamp that isn't connected. Feeling is the current that conducts creative energy. That is why every manifestation practice must begin with the body, not the intellect. Thought indicates the direction. Emotion starts the engine. Circles of possibility begin to spin around the aligned observer. Everything that does not correspond to the new vibration begins to lose strength and dissolves. People, habits, and scenarios that do not vibrate at the same frequency naturally fall away. This is not punishment, it is quantum adjustment. The universe removes nothing, it merely reorganizes according to coherence. The mature observer understands this process and welcomes it as a sign of realignment. Vibrational seeds of new states are planted every time the body feels what it wishes to manifest. This sensation is not idle imagination, but energetic instruction. Each cell records the vibrational state and replicates it. The entire body becomes a coherent transmitter. This is how the invisible begins to gain density. What was only potential begins to take form, not by force, but by tuning. Inner auroras announce the birth of the new line of reality. The observer feels the glow of the result before it becomes visible. Confidence is not expectation. It is the recognition that the collapse has already happened at the energetic level. Physical reality merely follows the trail of that certainty. Time, at this point, bends. The observer does not wait. They live the future now. Beacons of consciousness illuminate the path of conscious manifestation. Feeling the future as the present is more than a technique. It is vibrational art. Each breath is an opportunity to recalibrate the field. The more natural the state, the faster the return. The universe is continuous response. Whoever feels as if they have already received transmits the frequency of completeness, and the field, obedient, delivers the form that corresponds to the vibration. Inner portals of vibrational memory open the moment the observer awakens to the fact that they never lost the power to create. Reprogramming reality is not about acquiring something new, but about removing forgetfulness. Every consciousness already contains within itself the pattern of original harmony. What is called change is merely a return to the frequency of origin. To remember is to once again tune into the point of coherence where the universe and the mind speak the same language. Circles of time fold upon themselves, revealing that evolution is, in truth, remembrance. The future is the past seen from a broader point of consciousness. Everything the observer seeks already exists, but is encoded in subtle levels of perception. Reprogramming occurs when one remembers who they are, a creative consciousness, not a victim of circumstances. This remembering does not come through thought, but through recognized vibration. Sparks of wisdom begin to light softly. The remembrance is not intellectual, it is sensory. The body recognizes familiar frequencies and responds with tranquility. Each cell seems to remember its energetic origin. The observer realizes that their nature is not fear nor effort, but the state of pure connection. To reprogram is to restore this cellular memory of harmony. Nothing needs to be achieved. Everything needs to be remembered. Traces of forgetfulness dissolve under the warmth of conscious presence. For ages, humanity has learned to see reality as something external, separate from the observer. This distancing created the habit of trying to change the world from the outside in. Awakening reverses the movement. Now, the inner instructs the outer. The universe reorganizes itself as the remembrance of unity returns. True change is an act of recognition, not of conquest. Windows of perception open to show that all reality is merely a vibrational translation. The awakened observer begins to decode the signs with neutrality. Instead of reacting, They interpret each event as a message. What was once an obstacle becomes a code. Reprogramming occurs naturally as attention shifts from fear to understanding. The field responds to this new interpretation with equivalent scenarios. Oceans of collective consciousness hold the echo of human creations. Every thought ever sent continues vibrating in this common field, influencing new manifestations. To reprogram is also to help cleanse this vibrational ocean, replacing old frequencies with new waves of lucidity. When one individual awakens, they modify the field of all. Individual remembering becomes an act of collective healing. Pillars of coherence sustain the new architecture of the awakened mind. Instead of reacting to external stimuli, the observer learns to maintain internal focus as a center of gravity. Thoughts reorganize around this stability, and reality adjusts to reflect the new pattern. Coherence is not a technique. It is a remembrance of natural order. Everything flows with less effort because the entire system vibrates in harmony. Keys of remembrance hide in simple experiences: a gesture of gratitude, a moment of silence, an attentive look. All can reactivate the original state. The mind, accustomed to complexity, resists the simplicity of this process. Yet it is precisely in lightness that the field reorganizes most efficiently. To remember is to stop searching. The awakened observer does not force the real. They align with the essential rhythm of creation. Flashes of clarity ignite each time consciousness chooses vibrational truth over the illusion of control. The external world begins to function as a pedagogical mirror. It shows, in real time, the internal state of the observer. Every situation is an opportunity to remember which frequency is being emitted. Thus, reprogramming reality is updating one's own field of perception. Change does not come from outside. It springs from within as a natural recognition. Subtle energy weaves connect the perceived past and potential future. Between them, the present acts as a portal of access. The awakened observer learns to remain at this point of balance, without clinging to any temporal narrative. In this state, remembering and creating become the same act. The future is not prediction. It is manifested remembrance. Consciousness that recalls harmony manifests it automatically. Inner architectures of purpose begin to reorganize around clarity. Each vibrational remembrance attracts new, compatible experiences. Reality then becomes a mirror of awakening. There is no longer effort to change, only recognition of what has always been true. The awakened observer discovers that to reprogram is to remember the path home, a vibrational return to the origin of all creation. A threshold of consciousness opens before those who understand that to observe is to create. The universe was never outside, waiting for instructions. It has always responded silently to the state of the one who perceives it. Every thought, emotion, and gesture vibrates like notes in the same symphony. To change reality, therefore, is not to force the world to be different, but to tune one's own instrument of perception. When inner vision reorganizes, the real bends naturally. Doors of understanding open slightly to reveal that true power does not lie in controlling what happens, but in seeing without distortion. Coherence, neutrality, and presence are not mystical virtues. They are conditions for reading the field. The awakened observer stops fighting the flow and begins to navigate with it. In this state, life ceases to be resistance and becomes dialogue. Deep remembrances emerge. Everything that is sought already vibrates within. Reality is only the visible surface of this inner vibration. The secret is ancient, but it can now be lived consciously. To reprogram is to recall. Perception is the portal, attention is the code, and feeling is the command. Change happens effortlessly as the inevitable consequence of clarity. If this message resonated with you, take a deep breath and write in the comments, "I awakened the observer." That way, I'll know you made it to the end of this video. And if you wish to continue expanding this journey of quantum consciousness, subscribe to follow the upcoming content. Each new look is a new reality waiting to be perceived.